pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then they started to become this kind of across ecosystem collaboration thing,
Yeah.
and it became much bigger than J&J alone. And then the big question from those days was like, okay, we understand the theory, but what could that look like in practice? Can you somehow show us what that would look like?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure. Like we can build a system around this to help orchestrate all of that. Like, okay, great. So then we did that, and then when people saw the system, like, wow, okay, this makes total
Yeah.
sense now, and you now absolutely must do this. But J&J cannot own this, so this needs to be outside in the hands of a neutral party to figure out how to do that. And the EMA, for example, is very clear about that. Okay, we
Yeah.
like
Oh,
your
wow.
thinking, but it cannot be in the hands of a pharma company. So like, okay. And then we spent the next 2 years trying to move deep
Yeah.
out of J&J
Yeah.
and become independent. So we managed to do all of that. We got the company funded and started building the team. So we really only started last year.
Yeah.
So we were initially 5 people. Now we are a lot more than that, and the team is growing and all that. So that's the background. So what we then do in practice, and what's the original invention really is that we developed this structured content model and the blueprint for what the end product needs to look like.
Yeah.
And then we also mapped out the path to get there. So these kind of all the different steps you need to do and the right order of doing them,
Yeah.
so that you don't try to get to the finish line and then the regulars tell you like, wait a minute, you missed step number 1,
Yeah.
and then you spend like years getting there, and then you have to go back, and then it's like wasted 5 years and spent $1 million and so on. That's kind of what we've seen
Yeah.
happening a lot. So to avoid that, when we work with customers, we always start with these kind of strategies, like, okay, let us understand what we're trying to do, and then we'll do an assessment against our blueprint, our model, to see
Yeah.
where you have already covered things and where you might still need to do additional
Yeah.
work. So for example, if you think about the tech companies, they really have very little idea of any of this.
Yeah.
They only understand the technology, they don't understand the context of use and
Yeah.
all the different things, so we help them understand what the complete solution needs to look like. Pharma companies also struggle with this. They usually understand it a bit better, but usually they also have often gaps in this. So we first do the assessment, and then we have basically standardized
Yeah.
services that then line up with the different things you have to do. So this is where we are helping the services ecosystem also
Yeah.
deliver the right services to help all these companies execute that. So we don't necessarily do that ourselves, but we're
Yeah.
like, hey, you need to do some additional validation. Here's some partners that can help you with that. There's an
Yeah,
academic
cool.
organization or service provider or whatever. And then we map out kind of a timeline. Here,
Yeah.
okay, this is the order
Yeah.
in which we can do specific projects, like with clear objectives,
Yeah.
like, okay, because you had this missing piece over there, here's a project with the specific partners that you may want to bring into that, like for example, multiple pharma companies
Yeah.
needing the same exact thing. Okay, let's bring everybody together,
Yeah.
let's bring the providers on this side, and then
Yeah.
make that thing happen. So this helps us really look at the big picture, like zooming out and think about the best path to the finish line with the best use of our collective resources across the board. Like make sure we have the right expertise plugged in at the right
Okay.
time. So this is kind of what we usually do first. And then based on this, okay, now we need to actually execute on all of this. So great. For that, we have developed this platform to help orchestrate all of that. So we have different
There's a
features here.
really
So
big-
one of
Oh
the
my God,
features.
what's that? Right.
So one of the
Gone.
features.
That was flying.
So one
Any
of the features
allergies?
here is
No, nobody's allergic.
is a feature called interest register. So when there's a company that needs to do one of those pieces and they are wondering, well, does anybody else care about the same thing, they can publish this. So these interests initially are like always private. So when we do that assessment, we basically map those needs in this interest register for the company structured way. And these kind of get quite detailed and geeky.
Yeah.
So we basically, these interest register entries basically help you, allow you to link what you already have. Like, look, I have this solution, I don't have this validation done, and here's a link that you can use to go and look at our solution a bit more to understand what I have and what I need. And then based on these, other companies might say, hey, like, I have the same exact interest, I'd like to help you or join you in doing this.
Yeah.
Or it might be a tech company that says, hey, like, I see you're interested in that, I actually have the thing that you need.
Yeah.
So let's connect, let's talk. So this is a way for companies to signal their needs and interests.
Yeah, of course. So it'd be
across
like
the
a
ecosystem.
therapeutic. So like this one's nighttime scratching. If I went on here, I'd search by nighttime scratching. Is it that level, or is it?
Yeah,
like,
you can search at that level, but yeah, you can browse these things, and just to paint the landscape, there's over 90 companies today developing drug assets in atopic dermatitis or psoriasis out there. So there's lots of interest. There's going to be lots of interest in this scratch thing, and this is a mechanism to bring those parties together and so on. So once they're we are working on a project
Yeah.
or something like that, we have these different workspaces. So these workspaces are then for specific purposes. So and the workspaces also start by default as a private workspace for a specific company. So if you have a pharma company, Pfizer, they come in here, they can create their own workspaces and then invite their internal colleagues, like your clinical colleagues, your data science colleagues, your tech colleagues, your regulatory colleagues. Hey, let's all work together on this thing. And then if they need our help, for example, in doing any of these things, hey, like we need some assistance from Deep, so they can then invite us into the workspace, and then become part of their team. And if they want to bring in any of these other third parties, they can just invite them to help do the work. So this is where we then basically put our structured content
Yeah,
model into
yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of detail that you need to have in order to get these measures to the finish line. And the content model we have here, that this basically
Yeah.
separates what is being measured from the technology that is being used to take the measure. So we first define, okay, what is the measure that we're talking about? What's the context of use?
Yeah.
Is this an endpoint in a trial or some diagnostic solution? And then what is the target population and all of that very specifically. So typically the tech companies don't really think about this kind of
Yeah,
thing, but they
yeah.
say, oh, okay, oh, I never thought about that. Well, now we need to think about it and make sure that they have the right evidence to link to these kind of things. So what is it that we're measuring specifically? What are the variables we're going to capture about Nocturnal Scratch and so on. So that's all in this definition block, so to speak. So once you understand what you want to measure and why you want to measure that, then you can start thinking about the how. So in the Nocturnal Scratch example, we have a modality here, like a wrist-drawn solution for measuring Nocturnal Scratch. There are usually many ways of measuring the same thing. So if you think about something simple like number of steps, you can use a foot pod or a wearable device or a camera solution, or you can manually walk behind a person, count their steps.
Yeah.
These are all different ways of measuring the same
Yeah.
thing. And we call those different ways modalities.
Yeah.
So if you have a wrist-drawn solution here, one of our customers is developing a smart ring-based solution, because when you scratch, your fingers move very differently to your
Yeah,
wrist, so
yeah.
you get different performance. It's a very different kind of way of measuring the same exact variables. So that would be another one here, and there could be like other things. But when you then go into these, this is where then you then have requirements. Okay, if you have a wrist-drawn solution, what does that solution? What are the characteristics? Like obviously, it's a wrist-drawn device. And it probably cannot weigh like a kilo, because then your wrist would
Battery life.
battery
Apple
life,
Watch.
the kind of sensors it needs to have, like a gyroscope and blah blah blah. It's still agnostic to what the device is. It doesn't say that it's the Apple Watch 6.
Yeah.
So it just says, well, these are the characteristics, this is the level of performance
Yeah.
you need to get out of that solution, this is the kind of data you need to get out of
Yeah.
it, and describing those kinds of things. So, and then this becomes kind of a technology standard. So when we then go to the regulators, we want them to look at the definition, like, okay, do you agree with our
Yeah.
how we defined
Yeah.
this, and do you agree that this is the right thing to
Yeah.
measure in this population? Nocturnal Scratch, yes, that's a problem to patients, we agree, we understand, great. And then do you agree with our modality here
Yeah.
and the minimum performance requirements? Okay, we think we can measure this at 90% sensitivity.
Yeah.
There will be some errors, but this is the level that we think is acceptable for us to still make sense out of this.
Yeah.
Like, do you agree with it? Yes, we do. Okay, perfect. We have a new technical standard that is now endorsed by the regulators. Then the actual specific technology doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
So then we have multiple different brands
Yeah.
that can do this thing. So here's an
Yeah.
example of a specific device from Acticraft, where they can now map their actual solution against that standard. Well, if you need to have 25 days of battery life, well, I have that, and here's the information that proves
Yeah.
that I have these kind of sensors, and here's the information about my sensors. And then that's how we can confirm that all these different devices meet the standard, and these devices can continue to improve. So that solves the lifecycle management problem, because they always keep getting better and changing, and there's new versions every year, and da 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 da.
So if the regulators wanted a 30-day battery life, and would they ever make that recommendation, or is that just
Yeah. So these
and then that'd let those guys
correct.
know?
So that
Yeah.
would have happened here. Like when we then go one of these projects that we had here. So these like engage with the regulators. This is where we would present like, hey, we have worked with all the experts. We have created this new standard. We believe that 25 days is fine,
Yeah.
and here's the evidence, because like, well, the patients go to the site at least once a month or whatever, or like the device has connectivity. So 25 days means that you can still capture all the data, even if you can't send it every day. And then they might say, well, okay, well, we are super conservative. We actually would prefer 30 days. Okay, fine, we'll make it
Yeah.
30 days then. okay.
Yeah, you have to go back and
yeah.
go, uh-oh.
Yeah,
Cool.
but then everybody would know, okay,
Yeah.
it now must be 30 days, then Acticraft can go and upgrade their battery to 30 days because that now is now the new sort of standard that they have to meet. Of course, these devices keep getting better, so as the performance also improves, we can also improve the standard because hey, like 10 years time as well, actually we moved from 90% sensitivity to 95 because things are now better and so
Wow.
on. So then this is how the world can start making sense out of this and that we can generate consistent evidence
Yeah.
across different solutions and then it doesn't matter whether you use the Garmin
Yeah.
or Fitbit or whatever, the regulars, yep, it's
I've
all
just realised
part of the
that.
same
I hope you're
device.
not listening. That's like a secret.
Yeah.
I might
Yeah,
have heard.
it's going straight to Apple.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But that's the kind of thing that we then work with our
cool.
customers to actually execute
And it's
this.
validated, right? So from the start.
Yeah, well, there's many different things that you validate here. Yeah, this will then help the pharma companies actually put these things into their trials because normally they would have to have all these complicated conversations like repeatedly over and over again. So now these are building blocks that have already been approved. You get just using them here and here and here. So that whole process becomes a lot more easy and smooth. And this gives it's pretty geeky stuff, but for the expert, this gives them the structured guidance. Okay, you need to have all these things in place so that you then don't have any surprises when you get to the finish. Like, hey, we think we have everything, and then the regulars will tell, no, like you missed half of it. Go back.
Yeah,
And they're like,
I've
oh
heard
crap, like we have a study starting next month. Like, no, you need to go back.
I know, that's amazing. Which therapeutic areas have you worked in so far? Are you allowed to say, or is that secret?
No, we have some of the big ones. So atopic dermatitis, the scratch case is one. Cognition, Parkinson's. We're running now campaigns like on motor speech symptoms, like in Parkinson's, where people start losing their ability to speak. So we have many speech biomarker companies that can measure all kinds of different things from your voice. So we're now promoting some of those campaigns, and Alzheimer's disease, a lot of the CNS conditions are quite
But
quite
like
hot.
ECG and stuff like that.
No, that's kind of these problems have been solved. Like these are just like more conventional measures now. These things are mostly things that you do outside of clinic settings, and a lot of those devices have been already proven in clinical settings. So they're less so, but there's many like patches and things like that have do multiple things. But mobility, that's a big thing in across many different diseases. Things like fatigue, again, goes across many different diseases. Quality of life is really interesting. Right now, we always measure quality of life with these like instruments. And you ask your mobility, like, okay, well, is that all? And the WHO, I think they have defined like 24 different domains of quality of life. So how could we measure those 24 domains with a digital solution? Instead of asking you about your mobility, we can actually measure your mobility in real world conditions. And in the sessions we were in today, it was a nice example, like quality of life means very different things to people. So they explained that, well, for some people it means that you can do oil paintings. Like when you cannot do that anymore, then like, oh my god, like there's nothing left for me anymore. So how do you measure people's ability to do oil paintings? Because for some people that's the most important thing. Or I want to be able to play with my grandchildren. If I can't do that anymore, then you know what's left for me anymore. So so those kind of things we can hopefully start to measure in the future.
That's super cool. Yeah, I used to do stuff with MS. So do you work with the patient groups on it?
So patients are an important part of this development journey. So in the measure definition, that's where you need to really understand, like, okay, how is this going to be meaningful to patients? You need to understand their day-to-day and build the conceptual framework out of it. Okay, person with this disease, what does their life look like? And which of those things that impact their life most are the most important things to measure? Because you could measure 100 different things. Which out of those 100 are the most important things that you then put in as an endpoint? And then with the definition, you go to regular, hey, like we spoke to the patients, we spoke to the clinicians. Out of the 100 things we could do, we think we should do these two. And then do you agree with that? Here's all the evidence we gathered, and then they say, yep, makes perfect sense, do those two. Or like, hey, like, well, we actually agree, we think it's this third thing that you should throw in as well. Like, okay, great, we can do that. And then based on that, you can then start building the solution. A lot of companies have jumped straight to the solution, like, hey, I saw this thing at the conference, they can do X, Y, and Z, that's great. And then they discover here, like the regulars, like, no, like that thing isn't the most important thing to patients, so why are you doing that instead of these things over here? So
This is what you were doing at J&J to an extent.
Yeah.
Taking
So
it to another level there.
yeah. So this is such a geeky, detailed thing that
Yeah.
like creating deep is really has only been possible from having directly observed some of this stuff.
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
So,
it's really cool. Good for you.
yeah. So that's the sort of thing we do.
No, I love it. Yeah, no, because that's what we've got. I'll speak to Rob Nichols. You know Rob Nichols? Do you
Yeah, I know the
him?
name, but I don't.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one more thing that might
Yeah,
be also
go
very
for it,
interesting
go
for
on.
you. So, like I mentioned, to bring in these different partners here,
Yeah.
there's also a huge problem where, like, these pharma companies have quite limited access to specific expertise from startups or specific technologies
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
from these kind of
Yeah.
companies. So, we facilitate access to that expertise through our services marketplace.
Yeah.
Where basically, instead of them contracting directly with those companies,
Yeah.
they basically contract through a deep mission,
Yeah.
which is basically a project that we help put together. We then handle the contracting where they don't, like GSK doesn't directly contract with these companies, they both contract with the deep project.
Yeah.
So then whoever is funding this funds the project, and then
Yeah.
those people work for the project, not
Yeah.
directly for the pharma company. So that
That-
kind of helps bypass the qualification and contracting
Yeah.
kind of nonsense, and people get to work faster, and we get through these things.
Yeah,
quicker.
no. Anything people based, like let me know if we can help. Because at Coronado, we're looking at technology solutions, AI, trying to help mid-sized biopharmers. One of the areas is myasthenia gravis
Okay.
that one of my teams was looking at. And we've got market access and health economics as well. So I am no expert in how this would fit into it, but it definitely is super
Okay.
interesting. That's so cool that you've done that.
Yeah, so fortunately then talked because
Yeah,
we are
that-
now, this is an actual case that we're starting to promote now.